Good afternoon, and welcome to the National Press Club. I am Vivian Valberg, president of the club and correspondent for the Daily Oklahoman. I want to welcome all those members and guests in our audience. I want to welcome all those in Egypt, where this luncheon is being broadcast live, and to all those listening over the more than 240 stations of the National Public Radio Network and the more than 900 cable television stations affiliated with C-SPAN, the Cable Satellite Public Affairs Network. If you have questions for our speaker, I urge you to write them on the cards which are at your table and send them up to me. Our speaker will answer as many as time permits after his prepared remarks. Would like to tell you that next Monday our speaker will be Senator Charles Percy, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who is with us today, who will be making an important policy statement on his recent trip to the Middle East. On Tuesday, we will hear the distinguished film producer Francis Ford Coppola, and on Thursday, we will turn our attention to the future of gold, when our speaker will be a Swiss banker, Mr. Gut, the Chief Executive Officer of Credit Suisse. But first, let me introduce our distinguished head table guests. And I ask you to forgive me if I mispronounce any names. We Americans know far more about your wonderful country than we do about how to pronounce names. On my left, James McCartney, National Security Correspondent for Knight Ridder Newspapers. Edward Peck, Country Director for Egypt, the Department of State. Mohammed Haki, Chairman of the State Information Service. Karen Elliott House of the Wall Street Journal. Mr. Ezeldin Mukhtar, Secretary General of the Presidency. Thomas Nassif, Acting Chief of Protocol. His Excellency Ambassador Osama El-Baz, the First Undersecretary, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Nicholas Veliotes, Assistant Secretary of State for Near East and South Asian Affairs. Kamal Hassan Ali, Deputy Prime Minister for Foreign Affairs and Minister for Foreign Affairs. Senator Percy of Illinois, Chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. The Ambassador of Egypt, Ashraf Gorbal. On my right, Stanley Cohen, Crane Communications and Chairman of the National Press Club Speakers Committee. The Honorable Alfred Atherton, Jr., American Ambassador to the Arab Republic of Egypt. Mohammed Abdul Fattah Ibrahim, Deputy Prime Minister for Finance and Economy. Representative Clement Zablocki from Wisconsin, Chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Dr. Fuad Hashim, Minister of State for Economy. John Fogarty of the San Francisco Chronicle and Chairman of the Board of Governors of the National Press Club. His Excellency Ambassador Esmat Abdul Magid, Permanent Representative of the Arab Republic of Egypt to the United Nations. Morris Draper, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Near East and South Asian Affairs. Don Byrne of Traffic World, Vice President of the National Press Club. And General Osman El-Gendi, Deputy Chief Aide-de-Camp. Our speaker today is the President of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak. He became president just 4 months ago after the assassination of Anwar Sadat. To a country and a world shocked by the assassination and worried about its consequences, President Mubarak brought reassurance, a peaceful transition, and a promise to faithfully continue the Camp David peace initiatives begun by his predecessor. When President Mubarak took over, he was somewhat of an unknown quantity. True, he had led the Egyptian Air Force in one of its finest moments in 1973, and he had served as President Sadat's hand-picked vice president for 6 years. He had been sent on many a sensitive mission by Sadat, who was obviously grooming him as a successor. But his profile was so low that I understand one American journalist interviewing Sadat mistook the muscular Mubarak for a bodyguard. There's no such confusion anymore. In a short time, President Mubarak has put his own brand of leadership into effect. He has continued and intensified Sadat's crackdown on Muslim extremists, but he has also released from prison many journalists, political opponents, priests, and leftists jailed by Sadat. He has pledged to keep the Camp David spirit going, but has made it clear that his major priority is curing Egypt's domestic ills. President Mubarak has also started rebuilding bridges to other Arab states who shunned Egypt after Camp David, and while stressing continued friendship with the United States, he has made overtures to the Soviets who were expelled by Sadat. He has even told provincial governors that they should run their own provinces and stop referring every minor issue to Cairo. I guess that's the Egyptian brand of new federalism. President Mubarak has been called a leader who does more listening than talking, but today he is making his first presidential address in the United States at the National Press Club. I am pleased to present to you the President of Egypt, Hosni Mubarak.
But I'm going to be more talking today than listening.
That's right.
President Valburg, dear friends, really before I start my word, I'd like to tell you that I'm honored that a lovely lady presides over the club as it have the pleasure to address it. One of the last bastions of the male chauvinism have surrendered. Congratulations. Friends, I'm very pleased today to be with you. I welcome an opportunity to meet with those whose mission is the circulation of information and analysis. Your task complements ours. We need your understanding and cooperation. It is not my intention to deliver a formal speech on this occasion. Rather, I would like to continue with you the dialogue our late leader, President Sadat, started for our common benefit. It is my policy to talk frankly and speak my mind. I don't like to beat around the bush or sugarcoat my views. I believe in straightforward answers to relevant questions. At the outset, I want you to know that the overriding principle of Egyptian policy today is continuity and stability. This applies to our foreign policy as it does to domestic affairs. We believe in the validity of the basic premises of our policy. They are reflecting the consensus of our people, setting priorities and objectives. It is not the task of a single individual or a small group that forms an elite. However, I am certain that you agree with me that policy is a dynamic process, not a static one. Everything around us is constantly moving and developing. Thus, our response to events must not be a rigid one. That's why I am opposed to dogmatic thinking. I believe in a down-to-earth approach that is geared to solving problems. Countries like ours, and in fact all countries, cannot afford dogma and wishful thinking. Even the revolutionary had to start from recognizing existing realities before he struggles to effect a change. We also believe in the interdependence of nations of today's world. No nation can live in isolation. No nation can live in isolation. Whatever happens in a remote corner of the globe directly affects all other corners. Thus, we must learn to live together in peace and harmony. We should seek convergence instead of emphasizing divergence. The challenge ahead of us is to compete peacefully and not to outmaneuver each other. Therefore, we firmly believe that it is an absolute must to maintain world peace. As charity begins at home, we are all totally committed to peace in our region. This is a sacred mission that should never be hindered. As President Sadat once said, peace in the Middle East belongs to the collective conscience of all its people. Dear friends, peace between Israel and the Arabs, including the Palestinians, is the only rational option available to both sides. Other prospects have bleak implications for each and every one among us. No one can gain from the continuation of violence and tension. Hence, our evaluation of the status quo should be based on how much it serves the cause of peace and not on considerations of expediency. The core of the Middle East problem is the Palestinian question. Before it appeared in the 40s, there was no dispute between Arabs and Jews. Notions of racial or religious prejudice are aligned to our culture. Muslims and the Christians of the Middle East never had any problems coexisting with their Jewish neighbors at all. Therefore, any serious effort exerted to bring about peace between these cousins have to start from the key point. It would be a grave mistake to think that we can evade the complexity of the Palestinian problem by shelving it or positioning its solution. True, we may achieve the solution in stages rather than through a one-step approach. This is the philosophy of the Camp David approach, which remains, and I'm emphasizing, it remains the most valid mechanism for a comprehensive settlement for the Middle East problem. The starting point of such phased solution should be mutual acceptance and recognition. When we talk about mutual recognition, we have in mind the recognition of rights and not institutions or organizations. Each side must recognize the other's right to live in peace and dignity, free from fear and hate. The status quo is in contrast with this objective. It is an invitation to further violence and tension. If the Israelis were able to mend their fences with the Egyptians, there is no reason why they should fail to do the same with the Palestinians. They lived together for centuries without a single incident of animosity. To revive this tradition, we had to find a formula that would enable both of them to live together as good friends and good neighbors instead of the current tension generated by military occupation. Hence, their cooperation and acceptance is crucial. We accepted the idea of establishing a system of full autonomy in the West Bank and Gaza as a transitional formula and not a final solution. In essence, this formula aims at terminating Israeli occupation and control while preserving the security of both sides. In order to give this formula a chance of being implemented, it must be acceptable. Dear friends, when we say that the Declaration of Principles of Autonomy must be accepted by the Palestinians, we are not introducing a new condition at all. We are not suggesting that we should seek their prior approval before we agree on the declaration. We are simply saying that all sides should bear in mind throughout the negotiations that their purpose is to attract other Arab parties to the peace process to join it. A bad agreement is much worse than no agreement. It complicates the situation further and damages the chances for future reconciliation. It also gives the forces of obstruction and the negativism and new ammunition to block the road to peace. When we reach agreement on a good formula that is likely to win the approval of moderate Palestinians, and they are many, we will not withhold our consent. But to suggest that we should rush to agreement on any formula for the sake of making progress would be counterproductive and very harmful in the long run. The date of reaching agreement is immaterial. The 25th of April has no relevance here at all. Of course, the sooner we can agree on a reasonable formula, the better the situation becomes. It is the interest of all partners to begin the process of conciliation as soon as possible. No one benefits from the continuation of conflict. I noticed that some of you are wondering what happens in that area after April the 25th. The answer to this question is very clear in my mind. April 25th, we will continue to build bridges of understanding and friendship with the Israeli people. The April 25th is not a barrier and will never be a barrier at all. We will continue to build bridges of understanding. This policy is irreversible. It is the trend of the future. In fact, the completion of Israeli withdrawal from Sinai will open the door for more interaction between Egyptians and the Israelis. It signals the removal of another psychological barrier on the road to full peace. We will continue the autonomy talks. If we do not reach agreement then, we shall continue to promote a negotiated settlement between Israel and all Arab neighbors. This is a commitment we made, and we will always honor. Our historic role in the area is that of the peacemaker. Egypt is the key to harmony and stability in the region. The stronger our hand is, the easier it becomes to heal the wounds of the past and pave the way for a happy future. My dear friends, we are for the elimination of tension and suffering in all four corners of the world. We believe that we should direct our talent and ingenuity toward conflict resolution rather than conflict management. Thus, we support the reduction of arms in all regions. We are vigorously advocating the establishment of a nuclear-free zone throughout the Middle East. By the same token, we hope that the United States and the Soviet Union will reach agreement on strategic arms limitations. This can lay the foundation for a world of more coexistence and less tension. Third world countries have a crucial role to play in this respect. They can perform that role by adhering strictly to the principles and the policy of non-alignment. They should strongly resist the pressures of polarization and spheres of influence. Foreign intervention must be checked and punished. During the last decade, the non-alignment movement lost much of its effectiveness and influence due to several factors. Superpower pressures, the need for aid and technology, disputes among members countries, and the difficulty of adjusting to the changing international scene crippled the movement to an alarming degree. That's why President Sadat launched a vigorous campaign during the Summit of Non-Alignment at 1975, held in Colombo, Sri Lanka, to strengthen the movement and to instill a new spirit in its ranks. That's also the reason why we are embarking on a new effort to strengthen the movement and enable it to play its pivotal role in promoting peace and friendship among nations. Within this context, we have contacted our co-founders of the movement, namely India and Yugoslavia, in order to agree on a common strategy. It goes without saying that the strengthening of that movement does not cause any harm to outside powers. On the contrary, it helps others reduce tension and redirect their resources for the good of the mankind. Millions of newly born babies die of hunger and disease in every part of the third world. Millions of school-age children are left without education because of the lack of facilities in many countries. All people are still suffering from insecurity and fear. The gap between the rich and the poor is widening rather than narrowing. The hope for transfer of technology to developing countries has not taken place on the large scale which is required for the success of development efforts. Our adherence of non-alignment does not preclude strong ties of friendship with the West. In fact, we consider the friendship between our nations one of the main pillars of our policy. In the past 2 days, I held constructive talks with President Reagan and his advisors with a view of furthering our cooperation in all fields. I am very satisfied with the outcome of these talks. I found President Reagan most understanding and cooperative. He is a man of conviction and commitment. He is for peace and prosperity. We agreed on the necessity for pursuing our vigorous efforts until a comprehensive peace settlement is reached. We discussed the situation in the region and expressed hope that the war between Iraq and Iran will come to an end soon. No one stands to gain from this protracted conflict at all. The United States agreed to introduce more flexibility to its aid to Egypt. To be sure, we do not intend to increase the burden on the American people. Our aim is merely to make the aid program more efficient and responsive to our needs and priorities. We have started a comprehensive review of our economy. Here again, we are not thinking of a drastic change of policy. Stability is very essential to the success of our endeavor. The open door policy will continue and receive more encouragement. We welcome foreign capital and know-how. The purpose of the new effort is to increase production, control the steady increase of consumption, and create new jobs for the new generations of hard-working Egyptians. We know that such sweeping reform will entail certain sacrifices, but we are most willing to give for the good of our country. Each year, we have to provide new jobs for 400,000 young men and women. The government cannot undertake this task alone. Private enterprise can play a very important role, and we are determined to encourage it by any means. We welcome any help our friends can give us to enhance our ability to cope with economic problems. We appreciate the help we have received from the United States, and we intend to maximize its impact on our economy. While maintaining the policy of open door, we might reset our priorities, and we expect the United States to respond to this change with flexibility. A massive training program is needed for our working force. Our responsibility in this respect is not limited to Egypt alone. About 3 million Egyptian workers and professionals are carrying on the mission of reconstruction and the prosperity in the Arab world and Africa. Their task is closely linked to development efforts in Egypt. We seek your cooperation in this field. We also urge American private capital to be more forthcoming. There are no risks involved in equitable investments in Egypt, where social and political stability prevail. On the other hand, the need to enhance our defense capability continues. Making peace with Israel does not negate our responsibility in that crucial part of the world. A strong Egypt is the best guarantee for stability in the region. It is a shield against aggression and foreign intervention. No other country is more equipped to help sister Arab or African states in time of need. Foreign forces or bases cannot meet the challenge. My dear friends, together we have made a new beginning on the road of peace. Together we will persevere until we reach our goals. We must maintain the unity of our purpose and the clarity of our vision. The future holds a great promise for our nations. God willing, we shall meet the challenge, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now for the questions. Do you feel that the Reagan administration has been receptive to your call for dialogue between the United States and the Palestinians?
Really, we have discussed this matter with Reagan administration, and we have exchanged views, and we are tied to the Camp David Accords, and we are going to follow it for the comprehensive settlement of the whole problem.
What steps should the United States take in order to find a lasting solution to the problem of Palestinian self-determination?
Really, I have answered this question in one of my speeches yesterday. The United States should start a dialogue with the Palestinians. The problem, the core of the whole problem is the Palestinian problem. We shouldn't deny that. If we want peace to prevail in the whole area, the United States should start a dialogue with the Palestinians. They will ask, what kind of Palestinians? There are moderates, there are Fatah, there are so many people. Whenever we reach a good declaration of principles, which will be a good thing for encouraging other factions to join the negotiations, we find those Palestinians who could join the negotiations.
Would you be more specific as to the commitments the United States has made to make its aid more flexible?
I think it's a very long story, but I could tell you very briefly. I'm not asking the United States to do with the aid exactly as they do with Israel, but I'm just telling you to be much more flexible and frankly, and instead of having this aid on projects, we would like to be sectorial. So in one sector we can move from one project to another, so as to do something to the people, and the people in Egypt could feel the real result of the American aid.
Is Israel responding satisfactorily to the question of Palestinian autonomy, or are the self-determination demands of Palestinians being forgotten?
Palestinian demands being forgotten, yes. Really, we are negotiating with Israel now, with the full autonomy. The United States is a full partner since we started this peace process. Of course, there are differences between Egypt and Israel concerning the full autonomy, different in some points, but I'll tell you for one example. For the autonomy authority, we can't say that the authority will have control only on the people and not on the land. If we are Egyptians could accept such a principle, we will be attacked from every country in the world. And you, in the United States, will attack us. Why do you deny the Palestinian rights? That's why there are some difference, but with the continuous negotiation, I hope we could narrow the gap between Egypt and Israel, and this needs the help of the United States, which I repeat again, is the full partner in the whole talks.
Given the present state of affairs in your part of the world, do you believe that a lasting peace which includes Israel will be achieved in your lifetime? If not, why not?
It's a very interesting question. The answer is, I would like to forget the last part of the question. Peace is peace. It's a very precious thing. We always look forward for peace. We lived 30 years in wars, hatred, bloodshed, everything. Economies were deteriorated. We are looking for peace. We would like our people to live, and we are going to do our best for peace. Lasting peace, not temporary peace at all.
Mr. President, what role, if any, do you feel the Soviet Union should play in the settlement of peace in the Middle East?
I don't know if this question It's a straightforward question or a question which has side meanings. I know why this question is just given to me now. You may ask, I was putting it in my speech about the experts which we asked for, but I took it away because I was expecting the question. You know, we have some installations and we bought some equipment several years ago from the Soviet Union and some of the Soviet-built factories in our country. When President Sadat took the decision, just tell the, for the Soviet ambassador in the country, we sent away all other experts who were working and which they didn't finish all the installations there. Now, after changing the government, we found that these factories are not working. Not all the factories. The installations needed to be finished. They are under their guarantee. So I decided to ask these people to come, finish these installations. Then when we finish them, I don't think we don't need any more population in our country. So they are going to leave. The time will range between 1 to 12 months, that's all. And the media is making a big fuss on it, which I don't think is not of that great importance. Maybe the meaning of the question. The question is making a very good circle.
Mr. President, Israel and Egypt are the beneficiaries of the largest foreign aid programs of the United States. How do you justify having so much assistance go to Egypt, and should not smaller developing countries be given more and Israel and Egypt less?
You just mentioned at the beginning Israel and Egypt. But I would like you just know that Israel takes more aid than Egypt. If you want to take some of our aid to any other country, why don't you ask the Israelis and take more of them? Israel is a very rich country. You may say, why? You may be amazed. No, don't be amazed. The vein of life is going from the United States to Israel. You are providing everything. We are a poor country, but we are a pivotal country in the area. This we should realize. That's why the United States should help Egypt. I don't mean not to help Israel. I'm asking you to help Israel. I'm not telling you at all to neglect Israel. But Egypt should be given much of your help so as to grow more and more, because it is the biggest country in the area. We shouldn't deny that.
Is there any commitment or change you wanted from the Reagan administration which they did not make? If so, why do you think they didn't?
It's a vague question. Change in policy, change in aid, change in what, I don't know. In the policy, I never asked the Reagan administration to make any change in the policy. All what I asked the Reagan administration, just to give us much more flexibility in the aid. That's all. And we spoke about the autonomy talks, the autonomy negotiations, and the complete withdrawal. And I don't think we have no difficulties with the administration at all.
What forms of military alliances and agreements were discussed between you and President Reagan?
Military alliances. Really, we didn't discuss so many in the military aid because this was discussed before and there was no problem about it. And we spoke several times about the date of delivery just to be much more quicker, not for the cause to prepare ourselves for any war, not at all, but for mainly one reason. Our armed forces are running short of equipment because of the Soviet equipment which has been now deteriorating and been now consumed. So that's why we ask them that you should hurry up for the delivery for this specific reason, so as to give the satisfaction to our armed forces that the United States is providing us in time what we could achieve.
Does your recent decision to buy French Mirage 2000 fighter bombers mean that you no longer wish to be dependent on the U.S. as your primary arms supplier? If not, what conclusion should we draw from the sale?
Really, I was going to mention the answer to this question in my speech. Also, just I skipped it and took away because I expecting this question. The question of Mirages is very simple. You know that we bought Mirages from the Republic of France since 1974. We had Mirage 5. After that, after these Mirages which we bought from France, the Air Force in Egypt, the amount of fighting planes, the main bulk, every year is reducing because of course, you know, in the Air Force there are accidents, spare parts which are not available for the Soviet planes. So we had many pilots and we have no planes. So President Sadat decided to buy some planes from the Mirages, the same series. At that time, we hadn't any commitment from the United States to buy any F-16s. You know the morale of the people. They found Israel having the F-15 and F-16, and we haven't any of these planes at all. And we are running short of the planes. So we decided just for the morale at least to buy some Mirages. The negotiations of the Mirages started 2 years ago. It was not a new thing. It is concluded only yesterday. It is not a new concept. It's not a new policy. It is nothing new. As far as we are going to receive also your F-16s in the coming March, I think we'll have no problem. But if I ever thought that to cancel this Mirage 20, the French people will think that there is a pressure exerted from the United States on Egypt to cancel it, which we don't like this to happen. And I think you agree with me.
Did you ask for the second meeting with President Reagan, or did they volunteer it? How important was it?
The Mirages?
No, your second meeting with President Reagan. Why did it come about?
You are counting everything. Would it be strange if I asked to meet him again now? Of course, we met yesterday. We reviewed all what we discussed before and went in front of the press and gave some words, and that's all. I'm afraid to ask to meet him again now. You may make a big fuss about it.
Under Mrs. Sadat, there was much liberalization of Egyptian womanhood. Do you and your wife intend to continue to promote this liberalization of women in Egypt?
I think you yourself could understand my conception. I congratulated you when I came first before I say my speech. Each has his own way of dealing in life. That's all.
Mr. President, are you interested in restoring ties with Moscow, and would you comment on your government's decision to allow 66 Soviet industrial experts to help Egyptian factories?
I think I answered this question before. I went to Moscow several times. I was accused when I was appointed in the Air Force that I'm one of the communist people. But I am an Egyptian. I'm Egyptian. I'm not a communist or any other kind. You are Americans. You will never be Soviet or any other kind. I'm Egyptian, looking for the benefit of our country, dealing with good friends, cooperating with good friends, whenever we are dealing on equal basis. I have nothing new with the Soviet Union.
What are your policies and plans in regard to President Gaddafi and Libya?
Really, it is a very difficult question to answer. I have mentioned since I've been elected as a president of the Arab Republic of Egypt, I declared not to say a single word against any Arab friend or any other country. So please excuse me just to express any idea about that. He is your friend. He bought from you the Boeings, the C-130s. I'm going to ask you this question, not me.
I think if you decide not to be president of Egypt, you have a future as a humorous cocktail speaker.
I will give much money on that.
That's right. What is your role in ending the Iran-Iraq war? Did King Hassan consult you before announcing his entry to the war?
King Hussein?
Saddam Hussein.
King Hussein. Gentlemen, I said in my word, our conception, our idea about the war between Iraq and Iran. I hope that such war of attrition could come to an end. From my point of view, I would like this war to end without a winner or a loser, frankly. But that King Hussein contacts me or don't contact me, we have no relations, diplomatic relations with King Hussein or the other Arabs. And for me, I can't say any more words concerning this point. Thank you.
Would you go to the assistance of Iraq if Iran, I'm sorry, would you send, would you go to the assistance of Iraq if Iran should begin to penetrate Iraqi territory?
Iraq has no diplomatic relations with Egypt. The relations or diplomatic relations between Egypt, Iraq, and Iran and all the other countries is severe, you know. But for us to send armed forces for any country without any reason, we are not ready for that. We can't send our armed forces anywhere unless we exchange views in such a thing and we give our commitment. If we give our commitment on any document, we are ready to fulfill it. But we are calling all the people in the area, all the nations, solve their problems peacefully. We had good experience in the war. What does the war do to the people, to the economy, to the poor people? This is something terrible. I'm advising those people just to come to an end from this war and look to their people internally. We are helping Iraq, of course. We are not helping Iran.
Mr. President.
Some arms, ammunitions and arms. We are not sending forces.
Mr. President, you spoke of that foreign intervention should be punished. What do you mean by that?
As we all know, what's foreign intervention? It doesn't need any more explanation for me about the foreign intervention. Is the United States going to fight Egypt? Is any of the pro-United States thinks of fighting Egypt? You know the foreign intervention. I would like not to say it clearly in such a big conference.
In view of the need for extensive training of the labor force and for economic development, to what extent will Egypt call on Israeli experience and know-how in this field? To help you train your labor force.
Anyway, look, Israel, we consider Israel as any country in the world whom we have with diplomatic relations. We have diplomatic relations with more than 120 countries all over the world. To cooperate with Israel, to cooperate with Italy, to cooperate with France, to cooperate with Sweden, with Denmark, with any country in the world, it is like any other country. If there is something useful in Israel for our benefit, our cooperation, we never hesitate.
Mr. President, before I ask you our final question, I would like to present you with a certificate of appreciation from the National Press Club and a National Press Club tie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our final question is, how do you like the National Press Club China?
I could see it in front of me.
Okay. Thank you very much.
The president of the National Club expresses how the National Club is.
If I may ask that all of our guests stay in their seats as I escort the president and his party out of the room.
This or that way?
Is that this way? Okay.
Yes.